Get over here!
Okay, so this is Dell's latest and greatest XPS 15 for 2019. This is now the 4th iteration of this product, and it's good. It's really good for what it was meant to be, but it's not as good as what it could have been. So when this thing first launched 4 years ago, I think it was one of the best looking devices available in the market at the time. And I think a lot of people felt the same way. It was just a really nice looking 15-inch powerful laptop, and it was thin, it was light, but 3 years later, it's not as unique of a product as it once was. Now, because it's on its 4th iteration, I'm not gonna go through the details of every single component. Like, a lot of it has not changed even compared to the first iteration. Still has the same kind of design on the outside, still has the carbon fiber keyboard. It's a great looking device and it's a great performing device for what it is. But I'm gonna focus this video on the stuff that has changed, as well as like a bigger picture discussion on whether or not this device is for you. Now, one of the main features they've added this year is the option for an OLED panel on the display. And it's a really nice looking display. Now, this isn't the first OLED panel I've reviewed on this channel. I've talked about a couple of other devices, mostly gaming devices, but they all use the same panel. These all use the Samsung panel, OLED, 4K, really nice image, and it's particularly noticeable in media consumption. Like if you're watching stuff that supports HDR or just stuff that has a lot of color and just can show off the vibrancy and the benefits of an OLED screen, this thing looks awesome. But I have to say, in comparison to the previous 4K panel that they had available, and they still have that option, like just the 4K regular IPS panel, it's not that much better. It's not to say that the OLED panel doesn't look amazing, it's just that the original 4K panel that you could have gotten with the XPS 15 last year was such a nice looking panel to begin with. Now, if you're worried about OLED screen burn-in on a laptop, I've talked about this in previous videos, but I feel like I should mention it here as well. I've done a couple tests. I've had a screen that just had a static image for over 30 days and there were no issues with it. So I feel like for these particular panels, like the Samsung OLED panels that we're seeing a lot of this year, they're perfectly fine for OLED longevity. Okay, I want to talk about performance. This is a device that's running the 9th gen i9, so it's an 8-core CPU, as well as the GTX 1650, a reasonably powerful GPU from NVIDIA. When this device launched 4 years ago, it had thermal limitations because they're trying to put some powerful stuff into a relatively thin and light device. And 4 years later, it still has very similar thermal characteristics to the original model from 2016. Now, some people look at this device as a kind of business laptop or kind of like a workstation laptop that is powerful and looks relatively good in a thin and light package. But there are a lot of people, and myself included a few years ago, that look at this device like a nice looking gaming laptop. Like you should be able to play games on it because it is so powerful, because it's running an NVIDIA video card. It is not a gaming laptop, and this is something I think a lot of people just have to drill into their minds when it comes to the XPS branded device. This is not a gaming laptop. As much as we want it to be, as much as it should be, because it has great hardware in it, it cannot play games properly to the full extent of what this hardware should be capable of. So this device runs hot. It doesn't throttle as aggressively as last year's model, but it still has some very distinct thermal limitations. Now, just some anecdotal story here. 3 years ago, when Overwatch first launched, it's a game that I play a lot. If you follow my channel, you'll recognize that name. It's a game that is not super demanding on your system, but I used to play Overwatch on the original XPS 15, and I went from bronze to masters on that device with a 60 Hz screen. And 3.5 years later, we have the 4th iteration of this device, and the gaming performance is not that much improved. You can play some lighter titles like Overwatch, but the moment you play a game that's taxing on both the CPU and GPU, like something like Apex, it'll throttle and your game will stutter. Now, I get it. You can do stuff like undervolting and you can lower the boost wattage on your system. Like, there's a lot of things you can do to work around those issues, but for the average person, they're not doing that. Like, if you're looking at buying this system, chances are you just want it to pick it up and go and do its thing. If you do, understand that this is still a thermally limited chassis. Now, there is something that I thought was a little bit strange. This device does not have an undervolted CPU. We've seen companies like Acer and Razer and even Apple, they all undervolt their CPUs to get the best possible thermal performance on their devices. Because this is such a thin and light chassis design, I would have thought that they would have just taken the opportunity to undervolt it as well. Because I manually undervolted it, and you do get better performance when you do. Other things, the inside. So not a lot has changed internally, but they do have better VRM cooling. Now, one of the issues that they've had with all the XPS chassis before, they did not cool the VRMs properly, and this year they have a heatsink on top of them. The rest of the inside hasn't really changed. It's now running a new Wi-Fi card. It's still a killer card, but at least it's got Wi-Fi 6. And the battery's also unchanged. It's still a very large battery, but on the OLED screen, it's a little bit less than last year. So last year I was getting over 8 hours of battery life. I got 7 running the exact same test. So 7 and 3 minutes on the same battery test as the previous generation. So still a solid battery life, but not as good as the regular IPS panel. Also, the webcam, so it's now moved up to the top. This is a big thing for a lot of people. It used to be down on the bottom, the nose cam, and a lot of people complained about it for years. It's now at the top. I actually think it's cool that Dell spent the time and resources to do this. It's actually one of the few thin bezeled laptops that has the webcam up at the top. Okay, I think that basically wraps up the kind of physical changes with this device, and I want to talk about the value proposition that you're getting with the XPS 15 right now. If you're on the market for an XPS 15, chances are you're looking for a device that's relatively portable, but also relatively powerful. And the other device that may have popped up on your radar is the Razer Blade 15. This is my personal device. Now, I'm not saying that I like the Razer Blade over the XPS. That's a lie. I do like the Razer Blade more than the XPS 15, but I'm not saying it's the better choice for everyone. I play a lot of games. This is why I go for it. If you play games and you actually want to get a device with the intent of playing games regularly, do not get the XPS 15. You will be disappointed. Like, the amount of money that you spend on an XPS 15 can be better spent on a bunch of other devices that are just better for playing games. But if you want something specifically for video editing or photo editing, or you just want something that is like powerful for, I don't know, development, but you don't play games, this is still a great option. The thermal issues are way less pronounced this year, and if I did not play games, I would choose the XPS 15 over the Razer Blade. One of the things that I like the most about the Dell device is the keyboard and the keyboard deck. I love the carbon fiber, I love how it feels, I like how it ages. It doesn't get gross and bad over time, it just stays really clean over the years as long as you wipe it down once in a while. And the keyboard layout is good. Like, I've never loved the keyboard layout on the Razer Blade. It's a really good device overall, except I really wish they would fix the thermals. It's weird that even after 4 years, they couldn't engineer themselves out of this thermal issue, but that's what we have. Now, I don't think that they'll be using this design and this chassis going forward. I feel like next year's device is probably gonna have a completely new redesign, which would be good in my books. Like, I feel like they've reached the limitations of this thing, so time to move on. But if you're interested in picking this particular year's model up, I still think it's a solid device. Just temper your expectations. Understand that it is not a gaming laptop, but more of a just workstation and just powerful productivity device. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thumbs if you liked it, subs if you loved it. See you guys next time.